why did my bill go up? So one, what we've done is we've actually made our bills so transparent. I would say we're probably one of the few, if not the only in the industry, that puts all of the master bill amounts, all of what the owner's share is of that bill, and all of what the resident share is of that bill, all on the invoice itself. So the resident can come in and reverse calculate their bill. They could take the master amount, take out what the owner's paying, and multiply in their resident share and get their exact amount. So that transparency reduces a lot of questions.
Welcome, Real Estate Hustlers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appleman, and today we are joined with Tiffany Mittal. Tiffany is a multifamily owner-operator and proptech executive with 15 plus years in experience. She founded Utility Ranger in 2020, joined 10X Incubator in 2021, and launched a new venture in 2023. Tiffany, we appreciate you coming on the show today. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. Happy to be a part of your show. Yeah, I'm an owner-operator and just kind of try to solve my own problem, which is how Utility Ranger was born. I've been in multifamily since about 2008. My husband has been in multifamily his whole life, so I kind of got married into multifamily, learned everything there was to learn about it. We're active investors. Most of our portfolio was in California, but we've recently moved to Florida with our family. And so we've been transitioning through 1031 exchanges, bought 5 new properties in South Florida over the last year, and actively still investing. And now we kind of use Utility Ranger as our secret sauce, as our value add strategy to continue to buy, renovate, renovate the whole BRRRR strategy. But now we've included the rubs within that strategy.
So are you on South Florida on the Miami side or the Naples side?
Well, I'm on the Miami side, so I'm about 2 hours north of Miami, about 30 minutes north of Palm Beach.
Got it. Very cool. So you go packed up and headed south, sold off your portfolio, and started over. So tell us a little bit about that. How's that going with real estate in Florida and so far, like finding deals? What does that look like?
Well, it's quite a bit different than it is in California, for sure. It's definitely hard to be a landlord in California with the continued regulations. And so that was a big driver, post-COVID. Also, homeschooling my kids was a big driver to kind of get out of California and move into a different state. So, but buying our properties in Florida, there's quite a bit of money to be had here. I mean, we're selling in California for $300 a door, little small units in Class C markets, and buying for $200 a door in Class B markets, with value to be had that are 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units, larger units, much nicer tenant base, much nicer areas. So we've actually continued to push our strategy, which includes utility billing as part of the value add as well. So we're actively looking. We have 1 more property left in California, and then we'll have a complete exodus out of California, and we'll be looking for our replacement property here in Florida over the next couple months.
So are you all purchasing and rehabbing condos and selling them?
No, we're strict multifamily. So, we don't really get into the condo game. It's not really our business model.
And that's, you said per door. So you're buying $300,000 per door in California?
Yeah, well, we're selling at $300 a door in California, buying for $200 a door in Florida.
Okay, got it. Okay. What is is it workforce housing C class that you're finding? What size properties?
That's what we're selling out of California. What we're buying in Florida, we just bought a 30-unit property in Coral Springs. I think we paid $240 a door. Those were 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, 1,400 square foot units, 5-story property, all concrete. We had a 30-unit property we bought in Pompano Beach. We bought that in 2022. We've already refinanced that, pulled money out, used that money to buy another property, using our kind of business strategy. And we bought another 10-unit building with seller financing in Victoria Park, bought a couple other properties in Victoria Park. So we're actively in the Broward market, and there's a lot to be had. There's a lot for sale. Not everything is good. It definitely, you have to weed through it all and do your own financial analysis. Yeah. But it's definitely been a fun project, I would say, to get everything moved over.
And I'm just curious because we just got back from Marco Island last week, so it's just the idea is always floating in your head of, man, it'd be a lot to move, a lot to do, but the quality of life in Florida is just, I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. You got
I would
everything there,
say
boating and
it's better than I thought it could be. So there's no regrets, and I kind of wish I would have done it earlier.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Our life out here is way better than we thought it could be. And being a landlord, I mean, you can make money easier out here. You don't have all the regulations on how much you can increase your rent. What, you have to give back 100% of your security deposit. All of these regulations really hinder your ability to make money as a landlord. And so if you kind of are unleashed from all of these regulations, you can really focus on, your business model. And if you have a good business model, you can definitely be successful here in South Florida. I think it's choosing the right market, right? So we chose Broward because Miami is quite a bit more regulated than Broward County. So we're kind of like Broward County and North, but there's so many people coming here. And if you really peel it back, I'll give you a little bit of my like insider knowledge of what I think about South Florida market that is coming from a big city and a place like California looking at the Florida market is really, if you think about it, the Florida market up until COVID has always been this kind of second tier market where everybody had vacation homes. It was like the playground of the rich New Yorkers who would come down and, everybody had their second home in Florida. But post-COVID, all the macroeconomic factors have really changed, right? So all these people now are working remotely. So they're not necessarily having to live in the big cities. So you have all these homes now that went from vacation homes to fully occupied. And so the infrastructure of Florida, especially South Florida, wasn't built to support all these full-time homeowners. So there's this huge amount of impaction in the grocery stores, impaction in the schools, impaction in the hair salons, all the businesses. So there's this huge drive for businesses because they need to be here to support all the new full-time homeowners. And then those businesses need workers, right? So then there's a huge demand for jobs to fill all these businesses that are popping up everywhere. And then those workers need workforce housing. So it's kind of continuing to go down the line. I think Florida still has a lot of growth to go, but I don't even think we've gotten to the phase where the jobs are definitely in demand, but the workforce housing hasn't caught up yet either. So I think that there's still a lot of growth to be had. And I want to kind of capitalize on that appreciation wave that if the rents here before, right, the rents in Florida and the rents in some of these other kind of sub-markets, you had higher occupancies and the rents weren't as high. So it couldn't justify the price being high. But now the rents in South Florida are no different than the rents in California. But, it takes a little while for all those rents across all the units to rise up, which will eventually increase the price of the overall property itself. So you definitely see the occupancy levels high. You definitely see the rents high. And we know that appreciation wave is going to come. So we're trying to jump in now and catch that appreciation wave because the demand here is real.
What about insurance costs? Have you seen that come down? Because I know it spiked. Is it still high?
It's definitely still high. It's something that you have to navigate. It's kind of like earthquake insurance in California. And again, I've been here now for 3 hurricanes, but I would rather be in a hurricane than be in a fire in California. Like at least it's coming, right? And everything here is built with concrete, so it's a little bit different. So we don't really we don't buy in flood prone areas. We definitely are picky when we're buying because we know that there's other issues with insurance, but the insurance is definitely a lot higher than it is in California. But then you also don't have the requirement for an on-site manager. So that brings down the cost substantially because in California, I think it's anything over 18 units requires an on-site manager. So that drives up your costs.
That's a requirement in California.
Wow. In San Diego, it's a requirement. I'm not sure if it's like that through the whole state, but anything over 18 units requires an on-site manager, and you have to pay that on-site manager, minimum wage at minimum plus a rent discount. it really adds up because you have that, you have employment insurance, you have all these other pieces that go along with that. So yes, you have higher insurance costs, but you can navigate that, depending on the lender that you go through. We bought a few of our properties with seller financing, which definitely gave us the opportunity to choose whether or not we wanted wind. And, it's kind of a property by property decision.
Yeah. And I'm out of Cincinnati, Ohio, but just from what I hear about California and how it even operates, it's almost like totally unlivable and unrealistic to even think about doing business out there because of the cost. So it's just up so top heavy. I don't unless I'm missing it. I mean, you have to charge so much, but then again, you got like buying power. People can only pay you what less than what they make, but it's like death by a million paper cuts.
Yeah, exactly. And now you can't, raise your rent because it's statewide rent control now. So even if you have a tenant move out and you want to rehab the unit and bring that unit up to market rate, you can only bring it up to 10% more than your previous tenant was in there. So if you can't bring that up to market rate, why are you going to rehab the unit? You're basically encouraging this like slumlord environment. And now, you have to give your tenants back 100% of their deposit, no matter what they do to your unit. So that, really incentivizes poor behavior on the tenant side. So when you have poor tenant behavior because they know no matter what they do, they're going to get 100% of their deposit back. And then you have poor, behavior driven by incentives on the landlord side of it doesn't matter what you do to your unit, you can't raise your rent more than 10% from your last tenant. You're not going to improve your unit. The tenants are going to continue to trash them, and that vicious cycle is going to continue. So we're just saying we're getting out, the writing's on the wall, and we're going to start putting our money where we have some more rights as a landlord. And we have the ability to make money and aren't shamed for making money or trying to make a living.
Yeah, so you're coming from the worst possible scenario for a landlord to Florida, where it's an open door and it's create good property, good experience, great homes for your guests, and you get any benefit. Versus California, you're more or less penalized for trying to create a better atmosphere. And I'm out of Cincinnati, so we've got properties in Kentucky and then Ohio's tri-state area, but Kentucky just passed it to where it's a felony if you. It could be jail time if you damage property. And those are the things where you have your checks and your balances. If you do this, then there might be that recourse on the end. So it kind of keeps everyone on a level playing field. But
where in California, you can't even do a background check to find out if there's criminal behavior in their background check now. And it's like, why? You're not keeping your residents safe if you can't do a criminal background check on your tenants.
Yeah, that's wild. And you don't know unless you know. And that's going out there, you've got firsthand experience. So I can definitely see how your all's move is definitely becoming fruitful. And you all purchase and operate your entire portfolio.
So we were full owner operators in San Diego, but when we moved to Florida with our family, you can't really manage from across the country. So we had moved to third party management. And at the time we were launching our tech company, Utility Ranger. So it really made sense. We were remodeling the home that we bought as well. And then all of a sudden we said, oh my gosh, we have so much time on our hands. And so it was really freeing to not have to do that day-to-day management. And we focused more on asset management and really converted our business into asset management. So when we started acquiring our properties here in Florida, we sought out a good property management company, and we meet with them weekly, and we focus more on asset management. Now, again, that can be complex as well, especially when you're used to managing it yourself. You have these, means of control that you're used to, and so you have to shift those a bit to focus on how you're going to grow your company, where you're going to invest, what type of product you're going to invest in. Those are the things you can control, and then you just have to communicate really well with your property manager on what your expectations are. I remember right when we moved, our landlord in San Diego, they had replaced like 7 air conditioners. It was like 2 months after we left. We're like, why are you replacing 7 air conditioners? Like, we would have never made that decision. Yeah. We would have tried to go and see if they could be repaired, see if any filters needed to be changed. So just kind of setting those guidelines and those expectations are very important when you move from owner operation to third party. It's definitely not a cakewalk in the beginning, but it's definitely given us additional time that we can focus on growing our proptech company. We can focus on growing our portfolio because now you're at the balcony view rather than in that day-to-day dance floor view where it's hard to really step back and work on growing your business.
Yeah, and fully in the weeds.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
what is your all's biggest property unit count in Florida?
Our biggest property is 36 units.
Okay, so you've got a property manager that is able to handle scattered site properties,
Mhm.
which is it's tougher to find that kind of a manager that can do it with economies of scale. But I
Mhm.
think once you find that, it's good. And then the contractors, labor pool, they bring all of those resources to you all as well.
Yeah, so our property manager that we use down here, they have like 65 maintenance on staff. So they have a bunch of smaller properties all throughout Broward, Palm Beach County. Actually, two of the properties that we acquired, they were actually already the manager of the property. And so it was such a great insider knowledge to say, okay, we're buying this property from one of your other clients. Like, give us the inside scoop of, how's it running? What's the maintenance like? So that was really nice. And then when we transitioned, the management company doesn't transition. It's really just all the, back end ownership stuff. So it was a much easier transition and they have a great reputation. And so we've continued to utilize them. Even we had a couple fourplexes that we bought. We had some boot left over in our 1031 exchange. And so we bought a few fourplexes that were in and around one of our other properties. And so they manage all of those as well. And it's been a good experience so far.
Nice, good deal. So that, and then you start your prop tech business. So tell us a little bit about that, and then how you've seen this benefiting your all's portfolio, and then others.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We were living in San Diego at the time, and I was in grad school helping my husband with his apartments. And I realized pretty quickly, like, apartment management is so hard. It's not really my cup of tea. If I was dealing with so many bed bugs and maintenance issues, I said, this is not really where I see myself in the day-to-day operations of the business. But I was, kind of a problem solver by nature. And so I had noticed that we were having a problem with our utilities. The rates were increasing. It was really starting to eat into our profits. But it's like the one phone call that you get from a tenant that really kind of changes your direction, right? It was a tenant who called to complain that she kept hearing running water from her neighbor when her neighbor was at work all day. And so we sent our on-site manager into the unit, and the on-site manager found out that the neighbor was leaving her shower on all day while she was at work. And she said, well, my dog has anxiety and I didn't want my dog to bark. So if I leave the shower on, my dog thinks I'm home. And then the dog doesn't upset any of the neighbors. And I'm like, oh my God, like, who does this? Like, buy a sound machine. This is back in like 2010. And so I had heard about this thing called RUBS, wasn't really familiar with it. My husband and I at the time had about 65 units in San Diego. And I called every RUBS provider out there, which for those of you your audience who doesn't know what that means, it stands for ratio utility billing. And I called them all and they said, I'm sorry, you're too small. We can't help you. And I was really irritated and said, okay, I don't like being turned down for business. So I told my husband, what was going on. And he gave me the idea, like, why don't you backdoor the service? And why don't you go get a job for one of these companies, figure out what they're doing, and then bring it back, and they'll have to take our properties on by default. And so that's what I did. I went to go work for one, grew that company from 100,000 to 20 million, got recruited out to work for another big one. Oh, wow. And kind of learned firsthand, really the secret behind utility billing. And that's what we found out, and that's what we utilize today. And so when we took on our first property, it was that 36 unit property. That following year, we got about 36,000 of additional utility reimbursement income. And so my husband's like, oh, all the tenants, we're going to have a flurry of move outs. They're going to be upset. We're charging for water. And instead, we got a flurry of maintenance requests. Tenants who weren't telling you that their flapper or their toilet was running because of the flapper, or their sink was leaking because they don't want you in their unit to see their pet that they're hiding or their extra tenants that they're hiding. I've seen somebody hiding a grow house in their closet. Like, they don't want you in their unit, but those have ramifications at the property level. And so we had a flurry of maintenance requests. All of a sudden, it's that slight modification of behavior. When you get a bill, tenants start turning off the sink and utilizing water differently. But that 36,000, the biggest like secret behind it is that 36,000 when we went to go get our property refinanced. And if you think about it, that's your third largest expense on the books. So when you get that money back, that's a direct impact to your net operating income. So, and that's how you value multifamily is your net operating income divided by your cap rate. So that made our property value at $1 million more just for that 36,000 of additional income. And then they were able to give us a cash out refi of 500,000, which we were able to use and buy another property. And that's when we were like, oh my gosh, light bulb moment. This isn't just about utilities. This is a mechanism to grow our portfolio because this is about forced appreciation. And this is that NOI hacking, that every dollar that you can get back has a direct impact to the value of your property. And so, but, half of the multifamily supply in the US, there's like 30 million units. Half of that supply is owned by mom and pop owners like me and you, and I'm sure most of your audience. Like these big utility billing companies won't help them because they're too small. So I said, how do I take this service model and turn it into a software model and put it into the hands of owners just like me, so we don't need these third-party companies. We can just make it so simple that we can do it ourselves and bill our own tenants. And so that's kind of the genesis of Utility Ranger, was solving our own problem, making it simple, and making it available to where anybody can do this themselves.
So are you all billing back, is it your typical rubs by the square footage of the unit, the size?
It's a combination of square feet and occupancy. So we use something called factored occupancy, which has some economies of scale built in for each additional tenant, and a combination of square feet. So, water, sewer, trash, pest control, you have to think of it as like unbundling your rent, right? Like look at other industries when there's price compression, like airlines, they unbundle their baggage fees. Now you see it in resorts, they're unbundling their resort fees. Now, if you can just unbundle your rent because you're so regulated on how much you can increase your rent, by unbundling it, now you can have all these additional charges that are variable expenses to you kind of removed from the rent. So now you can remain competitive with your rent, because that's the main driver of what's making people come to your property to move in.
It is. I mean, that's your rent rate is the billboard, and you have to be competitive on that front, but you also have to cover costs on the back end. So we have a property service fee, a pest control fee, your utility fee, your water bill. I mean, you've got to break it down because that's cash going out. For cash out, you need cash in. So it's if you can unbundle it, like you had alluded to, then that makes it, I guess, more edible for the tenant. They're able to comprehend it better, and they understand that there's costs, and they're using those services. So, how do you all get paid? Is that a percentage?
So we definitely don't take a percentage. It's much simpler than that. We actually charge $3 per unit per month, and then that service fee is then given to the tenant as part of their admin fee. So essentially, our service is free for our landlords. But we also allow them, like if you're a small landlord and you try to use a service, they may charge you $6 or $7 for utility billing, and they're going to charge that to the tenant. So we're essentially doing that same thing, but only for $3. But we actually allow you to charge that $6 or $7 that everyone else is charging, because you essentially become your own utility billing company. So you can charge the $6 or $7 and make a couple extra dollars per unit as additional revenue on top of the admin fee. So not only does our software essentially be free for the landlords, but you can actually become a revenue generation tool by adding a few dollars on top of the admin fee for additional revenue.
That's interesting. That's good, because it's like pickles and cheese. It does truly add up, and those are just toppings on the burger. Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. And then the tenant has a portal that they can log into, and then they get an invoice sent to them through the mail.
Actually, it's even more simple than that. We've kind of taken this entire model because I was in utility billing for over 10 years. So I know all the inefficiencies that, arise in a typical service company. And so we've really streamlined the entire process. So everything is email based. So all the tenants get an email. And I'm sure you know this, tenants are so portaled out. They have so many portals to log into. It's mind-boggling. So there is no portal, and tenants actually don't know that Utility Ranger exists. So we're just a platform on the back end. The tenants get their bills, and then the bill actually turns right into the invoice. So they can click pay now on the bill, and that turns right into the invoice, and they can pay through their invoice. They could save their card details with a one-time passcode that tokenizes their payment. And so next time they get their invoice, they can pay with their saved card details, but there's no portal for them to log into. It streamlines the whole process. That payment goes directly into our client's bank account. So we don't touch any of that. All they have to do is pay for their subscription fee for licensing our software, and then that gets passed through to the tenant. So the whole process is very simple. That, I would say property management is not known for being very tech savvy. And so we kind of took that into account when we designed it to make it as simple as possible that anyone could do this.
How do we get that to show up on the rent roll? If we pull the rent roll, how do we get that addition? Say the bank wants to see our rent roll for the property. Is that something?
So it depends. So we have options to where you can actually have it go directly into the property management software system as well. And then on the pay invoice button, instead of the invoice go directly into a payment invoice, it can actually link directly back to your property management software. So you can either direct it to your bank, or you can choose to direct it to, let's say, Appfolio. If you're using Appfolio, they click the pay now button, and that goes directly to their Appfolio login, and then they can pay in through Appfolio as well. So it gives them a lot of options. So whether you use a property management software to collect payment, you can do that. Or if you need to collect payment and you don't have an option to collect payment, you can collect payment through our site as well. So we give those options because there's a variety of ways, and every property is just a little bit different.
So what kind of lift have you seen for clients that are already charging RUBS, set fees though, not necessarily by the square footage or by the occupancy? What kind of lift would you see a client like that have?
What's funny is a lot of smaller landlords tend to do this flat rate, and they do it more out of a necessity because the billing companies won't help them, but they can't continue to eat the cost. So they'll just figure out what the annual amount is, come up with a number and say, okay, you're going to spend $35 or $45 for a 1-bedroom and $65 for a 2-bedroom. But the hard part about that is it actually doesn't incentivize the resident in the way that you would think it would, right? Like, think to yourself, when you go to a hotel and your shirt's a little wrinkly, what do we all do? And maybe not everybody, but I do this. I put my shirt in the shower, I turn on the hot water, and I let it go because I want the wrinkles out of my shirt and I don't want to pull the ironing board out of the closet. So, but I do that because it comes with the cost of my hotel room, right? So our tenants think the same way. If they know no matter what they do, they're, if they're not paying for water, they're going to use water however they want, and they're going to do that same kind of behavior all the time. But the difference is if they think they're paying for water, so let's say I'm paying a flat rate of $35, I now think I'm paying for water. So instead of actually modifying my behavior to conserve more, I'm going to say, well, I'm paying for water no matter how much I use, so I'm going to darn well get my money's worth. And I'm actually going to use more water because I think I'm already paying for it. I know no matter how much I use, it's never going to go over that amount. So my water use behavior actually changes and goes the opposite way. So you have a couple versions of lift. One, if you change to a RUBS methodology with occupancy and square feet and use the actual bill, you're, from a regulatory standpoint, you're more safe because you're not overbilling or underbilling based on some annual figure. But for two, you're actually getting the modification of behavior from your residents because they're seeing that kind of pricing trigger. So when your bill goes up and down, as it does seasonally, their bills are going to go up and down, and their behavior should change as everyone's behavior will change, and that should bring the bill down overall as well. So not only will you get more coverage of your actual bill, you have more regulatory compliance, but then you actually get the modification of behavior. Because again, if you're charging flat rate, am I going to tell you that my toilet's running or my sink's leaking or anything? Because I don't want you in my unit. And now when I turn over, I may have to rip my entire bathroom cabinet out because I have a leak that has been, ruining the cabinet that no one's told me about. So it's that tenant accountability, it's the tenant conservation. So it's kind of all of these things combined. You get a lift by moving to a RUBS methodology over flat fee.
Is there, and then you do have the fluctuation of the bills coming into the tenant. So are you seeing complaints coming in from the residents that my bill was 120 last month, and now it's 140 this month.
Tenants typically have two questions. How is my bill calculated, and why did my bill go up? So one, what we've done is we've actually made our bills so transparent. I would say we're probably one of the few, if not the only in the industry, that puts all of the master bill amounts, all of what the owner's share is of that bill, and all of what the resident share is of that bill, all on the invoice itself. So the resident can come in and reverse calculate their bill. They could take the master amount, take out what the owner's paying, and multiply in their resident share and get their exact amount. So that transparency reduces a lot of questions. And then if their bill goes up, they can see the master bill went up. And so that kind of eliminates a lot of question. And if there is a slab leak or anything, the owner can change what their proportionate share of that bill is. And so you'll see if the owner is making any modifications. You might have an owner who changes their owner share a little bit higher in the summer to accommodate for additional landscaping and water use that they have. So it actually eliminates a lot more of those questions just by having such transparency visualized on the bill itself.
Okay. I just, you are taking away an expense, but I guess adding more phone calls, you'll get calls regardless, no matter what, you're going to get calls every month. Just that's what people do. But it's being able to handle those calls and
you'd actually be surprised. You'd be surprised on how few calls our clients get. They might get calls initially when the program gets started, but it's actually because the bills are so transparent. I would say that's really what sets us apart from a lot of companies who are just putting the charges on the invoices. It's just a black box, right? So the tenants don't understand how that charge was calculated or where that number came from. So there's going to generate more questions to the management company. But by giving them that transparency on the bill every single month, they can see that and compare it month over month. And so that really makes a big difference on the questions that come in.
Yeah, no, I like it. I do. And like you said, I think it's probably a couple of years ago now, I'd reached out to a third party bill back company, and I answered we didn't have enough units. I don't think that'd be the case now, but now it's going back, and then you have to constantly re-engineer your cost. It's like you just have to revisit, and you're right. It all adds to the NOI. So if you can, again, fill the cup back up with cash that was going out, keep it in the cup, and that utilities is one of the biggest expenses along with taxes. I mean, that's huge.
And think of how much time you spend managing the third party company, because unless you have 5,000 units or 10,000 units, you're treated like a class C client, right? So you're not getting somebody looking at your account and kind of optimizing your bill back program very often. So then you're having to call them, oh, let's change this or let's modify this. But they don't want to talk to you if you have 20 units, 30 units, 50 units. You're like the last person that they're going to call back. And so you're having to spend and chase them down so much when you could spend hours trying to get that figured out, when you could just spend 10 minutes a month and do it yourself and not have to worry about all that back and forth.
Very cool. How many units does Utility Ranger currently manage?
So I can't give out the total number right now, but it's definitely growing. And we have a great partner that's actually in the utility billing market itself. So one of the largest players in the market, we have a strategic partnership with them. So they've been giving us thousands of units because they can't service these smaller guys. And so they have all these leads and they say, we can't continue to service them. So we forged a great partnership with them. So they've been giving us thousands of units since we forged a partnership with them last year. And they actually tried to acquire us 6 months in. And so we said, we're not ready yet. And but we formed a great partnership with them and continuing to onboard a lot of their units that they just can't take on themselves just due to the size.
That could almost be more exciting than multifamily. You don't have the toilets, tenants, and trash. But, I mean, in all reality, you still have units under management. I mean, it's just it's a fraction, but it's economies of scale. You've got 1 million units. It's 1 million units. Very cool. Very exciting. Cool. If you could give any advice to beginning real estate investors, what could you advise them on?
Well, I would say, I'll let them in on the secret sauce that we're doing on our buying, because we're actively buying in the Florida market now. So we purposely only buy properties that aren't billing for utilities, so we can turn on the utility billing right away and drive up the income and drive up the property values. So prime example, the BRRRR strategy, right? It's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So we're saying do BRRRR 2.0 instead of you're going to buy, but instead of dumping a bunch of capital into your units, which you may or may not have, especially if you're first starting off, instead of rehabbing, we're saying that second R should be reduce expenses with RUBS. So buy, reduce expenses with RUBS, rent, refinance, and then repeat. So we've done this. This is totally part of our strategy. We just refinanced our first property that we bought here in 2022, pulled out $1 million. We're able to use that money to buy our next 30 units. And so that's kind of our new strategy, our secret sauce, because there's still a lot of small properties who aren't billing for utilities yet.
Yeah.
You know, the larger properties, it's over 80% are already billing. And they're like, and I even have some clients in LA, and it's like no joke for them. They're like, let me pull the property taxes. I'm going to do the mosquito abatement charge. I'm going to do all these, you know, every single line item that they can bill off their property taxes, they're adding onto the bill because they're so limited on how much they can increase their rent. And so all of that's going to trickle down, amenity fees, all of these things, anything that you can unbundle that's to the benefit of the tenant that you can charge back, whether it's managed Wi-Fi, all of these things are going to add up. And so when you look at your property, you know, you should underwrite it, not just the numbers that they give you, but look at the utility numbers. Are they billing back? And then assume that you can bill back about 90% of that utility amount back to your tenants. Add that into your income and see what that does. It will increase your cap rate, it will increase your property value. It will definitely make the deal look a lot better if they're currently not doing it. So that's our strategy, and we're continuing to push forward like that. And it's been fruitful for us.
I think lenders actually appreciate it when they see the additional line items of revenue, because they see that you're professionally managing your property and your expenses.
Totally.
So,
and they expect it.
Yeah, it was a comment. We're preparing to refinance. Rates still are the rates, but it was a comment that was brought up. So it's well worth it. And I know I'm going to be circling back on this for sure and see what we can do on our end. But very cool. I definitely appreciate your time, Tiffany. Look forward to following you. If a listener wants to get a hold of you, reach out. How can they get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to our website, utilityranger.com, and we're on all the social media platforms. I'm on Instagram quite a bit. Our team's posting content. I'm posting content. LinkedIn. So all the platforms, and you can find me there.
Cool. Awesome. Tiffany, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Take
bye.
care.